All right, guys. Well, welcome to another episode of Misfit Social podcast. We have a very special guest today, Night Stalker Tim Morgan, aka pastor, guru, philosopher,
most things shallow,
and all around badass.
Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to the
Thanks.
podcast.
We only invite misfits, though, so I don't know what
right
that
in.
means.
Yes.
Yeah, I fit right in.
Yeah, that's definitely a misfit on that camera, on that
Yeah.
TV right there.
There you go.
So, obviously, Tim, you and I have a background that goes pretty far back. We were talking about some of our misbehaving
Yes,
in Mexico, but
my supervisory role.
yes, only in supervision.
It was his celebration, but he was.
It
still
was
there.
his
You were the
celebration, and he
were the
was
chaperone.
He was the chaperone.
Yeah, that's usually my role.
So we know each other pretty well. Paul and Royce are just now meeting you, but all the listeners want to talk a little bit about what the heck is a Night Stalker.
Yeah.
Man, we had to start out right out of the gate.
Yeah.
For the record, I just want to say that I did ask Cliff for a read ahead, so I knew what I was getting into.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get it.
Your read ahead was a thumbs up.
It's exactly what it was.
Tim, neither did Paul and I, so we're in good company.
So a Night Stalker is just an individual that has applied for and assessed and trained to become a special operations aviator or support role. The one thing that everyone, I guess, attributes it to most is the movie Black Hawk Down. I mean, I guess that's where we went from nobody knew about us till everybody knew about us. And so...
How many people would this constitute in military?
A very small percentage. I'm not sure the exact percentage. I am sure of the exact numbers, but I probably shouldn't say.
And it's everybody that does support for it, right? It's not just the people in the helicopters, or is
Right.
ground crew?
It's a really unique opportunity to work in the unit. I work with really a lot of kids that are younger than my own children. I'm the resident old guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll have a lot of kids, from 18 on up, and everything from, some kid that graduated high school and joined the Army, went to learn how to turn wrenches on a helicopter, or an electrician, or somebody that deals with munitions and those kind of things, to fuel, any specialty you can imagine with the aircraft.
But it's all around helicopters.
But also there's the folks that make sure you get paid, that make sure you have your maps and your intelligence and your training and your operations and your logistics and your signal issues.
Yeah,
I mean,
critical.
it's a pretty neat organization within itself.
Everybody in that unit has to learn all of this stuff?
Yep, everybody goes to the same training. If you were a fuel guy and I was a pilot, we would at least go through the same first 3 weeks together of medic skills, ground fighting, weapons training, and those kind of things. And then you branch off into, whatever your specialty is.
What are the variety of helicopters you have to kind of be aware of? And
you mean for internally?
I mean, like actual helicopters. Not the number of them, but the kinds.
Oh, so, that's just, kind of open source stuff. We have 3 what we call MDS, or Mission Design Series. The largest is the MH47, the one with the 2 rotors on top, and then the kind of the Army standard of the Black Hawk. We have 2 variants of that, and then of course the pride and joy center of the universe, what we call the Little Bird, which I tell everyone is basically the helicopter from Magnum PI, just paint it black.
And what is the purpose of that one? Reconnaissance, or
it's a precision light assault, and or the other variant is close air support. 2 different companies, each practices their own craft.
But it's combat.
Yeah, everything's combat.
It's not observation.
And so Night Stalkers specifically is like aviation support for special forces. Is there just one particular branch or do Night Stalkers go across, whether it's Green Beret or Navy SEAL or Delta or what do they call it? DevGru? Like, yeah, just is there just one unit the Night Stalker supports?
I'll take a step back from that line and just say that the unit supports special operations forces.
Yep.
How about that?
That works. Yeah.
That's some vanilla ice cream right there.
That says it.
You have a very special customer base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very unique opportunity. I mean, it's been really, and I tell people this frequently, I guess when I was young and when the flying was sexy, that was, that was the really cool part of it. But the older I've gotten, I've realized that it's not really the name of the customer that we deal with or the flying or the mission. Man, it's just the people that have the absolute same mindset, and it doesn't matter where you meet or how you meet. I mean, it's like brothers for life. So it's been a really unique experience that I've gotten to participate in.
So you may answer this or don't answer it. Is your unit attached to a particular one, or does it kind of move based on what needs are and mission parameters?
No, we're just changes quite a bit. We have our locations here within the United States where we're stationed, and that's where we just stay. We have, just like any Army unit, we have our higher headquarters units, et cetera, and do that. And then just like any other conventional force that maybe goes and supports, to look at that, let's say, Madisonville Air goes and supports Tunco.
Right.
They just go and take care of their customer, and when they're done, they move to the next customer.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Kind of the best way to describe that.
Yeah.
I mean, if Tunco were looking for an air department, then I happen to know a guy.
Well, we have talked about it. We have talked about it.
So when you get deployed, then that whole unit and all the equipment and everything goes to a site or whatever.
It's all tailored. I mean, it's always different. There's nothing's ever the same, I guess.
Are there missions you can talk about? Like old enough that they're not news anymore or something like that?
I don't know what the classifications go back.
Or maybe an example of something.
I think I would say this more so than not missions. One thing I've always prided myself on is I don't necessarily brain lock the missions or the events or the people that we've taken care of, or even the training. But I do enjoy the training more than anything, and I think that's the opportunity that people miss is the fact. And I see it like if you go to a certain city, the people complain, and I've witnessed it, standing on the ground as a safety, and we should have known. The levels of coordination take place literally a year in advance through all levels of government, and everybody knows we're coming. But it's really cool to go to a city in the United States and get to practice, because you have to practice somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so I wish people could look at that 10 minutes of inconvenience and go, man, we could be saving somebody's life by letting them hang out here in our city and train.
Sure.
And there's some good YouTube videos out there that you can pretty much just find and watch.
You kind of just did a politician thing on me, right?
Yeah.
Ask you a question and you just answered another one.
That's a fact.
That's funny.
How often are you still flying?
I still fly a lot. Sometimes more than I say more than I want to because I'm old. But I'm frequently referred to as the unicorn at work. I'm not the typical guy in my rank or position. And it's just long series of events that God has just been very gracious to place me in. So I get to do instructor pilot work. I am a maintenance examiner, which means anybody who's a maintenance test pilot, that when all these 18-year-old kids disassemble your helicopter and then they put it all back together, somebody has to be the guy to go make sure it's right.
Yeah.
And so not only do I get to do that, but I get to evaluate the guys who are doing it to make sure that all the standards amongst training and standardization is all met. And so I really enjoy doing that. And I still get to do some training, assessments for guys that are trying to come to the unit. I got to do that. Last week we had a young man had come to try out, and man, what a fun time. It's a good introspective look at yourself and what you're capable of.
Absolutely.
And you walk away. Well, generally you walk away, not humiliated, but you're not feeling as good about yourself as you did when you got there.
Right.
But it's a great opportunity to kind of see what you're made of on the inside.
You didn't grow up here, right, in Madisonville?
I did not.
Yeah. And did you go in the military straight out of high school? Or
I did. I was, man, I don't even know if I should say this or not because you already said I was a pastor, but I was really kind of one of the last of the, you better join the Army or you're going to go to another place with people that keep you with locked doors, mister.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had tried college and didn't do too well at it the first time. And then I had that
You got an A in partying, probably.
I had a unique opportunity to join the Army or explore other alternatives, and I thought, what a great opportunity! I think I'll take that.
Yeah.
And that was in
Wise choice.
yeah. I left for basic training in 1988.
Wow.
Yeah, and here I still are.
Yeah. Where was your training? I'm sorry.
Fort Benning, Georgia.
Okay.
I was just a infantry kid. No idea what I wanted to do in life or who I wanted to do it with or for or anything else. And man, that just seemed like a great idea.
You were going to ask something.
Yeah. What was your greatest joy during those years of active service? What really got you going, that got you excited that you could share? And then now at this stage in your career, what excites you? What brings you joy about the career?
Okay, that's what I was gonna say. We're gonna separate some pots there
We'll
about
zero
the
it
career.
down. Yeah, past active duty and then where you are now. What brings
I
you?
really enjoyed. This may come as a shock. I really enjoyed just kind of being a surly young. At one time, I was a warrant officer, and I really enjoyed being a surly young warrant officer flying an Army helicopter with a Stetson on the dash and spurs on my boots.
Come on.
Love it.
And I have gotten in a lot of trouble with, for those who have flown in CAV missions.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, my dad was a Vietnam guy. I grew up watching all the movies. I've seen every episode of MASH. But so to have watched Apocalypse Now, now on my 137th time, just that whole aura of it was my greatest joy to be able to do that and do it. My dad was stationed at Fort Bragg at one time. So
Wow.
to be able to have been at the same spot, jumped out of airplanes, flown a helicopter dragging a
I'm
skid
sure he
through the
was
trees.
totally proud.
Yeah.
of
My
you
dad
doing
was.
that. Yeah.
My dad was. He was. I'll tell you a funny story. It's a Madisonville story.
Awesome.
So my dad had gotten a dementia, and it was one of the last times we knew that he was coming to Trav when he came here. And I was a new pastor here. Can I say where?
Yeah, say whatever you want.
Absolutely.
It's not classified.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to embarrass those poor folks out there. They deserved a better pastor than me. But the folks at Silent Run, they were so gracious. They took on what really was an old young pastor, if that makes sense. And so my dad had come down. We knew it was going to be one of the last times he could come to visit. And I'd been at the church for just a few weeks, and I'll never forget. Dad was sitting back there, and I'll just be honest with you, I was pretty proud. My dad was just a good Christian man, and so I'd finished, and I'm walking down, and the preacher always goes to the back to shake everybody's hand like you're running for office. And he says, Tim, come here. And so I go walking over there. I'm like, yeah, Dad. And I'm thinking, my dad's, he's gonna give me some pride. I'm gonna carry on some of the namesake legacy. He goes, hey, he said, you're a preacher. He said, is he new? And I said, yeah, he is, Dad. And he looks at me, he goes, he sucks.
Didn't even know.
And I said, he'll get better, Dad. Don't worry.
He'll get better.
He'll get better.
Yeah. Yep. He's getting there.
I don't know that I've gotten any better. But
That's awesome.
yeah.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. So in this picture here, you're flying a little bird there.
I am.
Yeah.
I don't know why I got my mean Army face on. I should be happy and smiling.
Well, you sent me that, so I don't know. You were.
Maybe I was doing it for you.
Yeah.
Is that a Kentucky shot?
I don't
Can't
know.
tell.
I can't tell. It's
A
somewhere
lot
in
of
green.
Forest Station, yeah.
Well, if I knew when I sent it to you, I'd probably give a better idea. But yeah, that's pretty typical me, just sitting there hanging out.
And that is not like flying a Gulfstream. It's pretty bare bones, yeah.
It is. If you take your hands off the controls of her, she will try to kill you immediately. She wants a lot of attention.
Wow.
She's like a high school girlfriend. She wants a lot of attention all the time.
Now I know why you like flying.
Yeah, that was if I were guessing, I would say that was last summer. We were doing some training, multi-ship, and I would guess I was probably number 2 of 4 since there's 2 behind me.
So just an active recruit, how do you go from an active recruit to your kind of role? I mean, that's over what would that be, 30 some odd year career? Or
Yeah, so to get into our unit, you have to already have some experience. There's certain minimum hours that we're looking for, but although that's changed since the end of what we considered GWAT, the high time hour guys are gone. So, but we're looking for folks that have a certain hour level, certain demeanor. Like, again, we go through that assessment process. You get to spend a couple hours with the psychologist who tells you things about yourself, and you get to spend some time in the pool, not with
scaring the
mojitos or anything else. It's a unique experience in the pool. And then
testing for composure,
Yeah.
how you'll behave in really difficult situations, and
then you do. There's an opportunity to give a brief on how you would execute a mission and go actually, take, because all we give a guy is he gets a map, he gets a clock, and he gets a compass, and that's it. And our motto is plus or minus 30 seconds anywhere in the world. And so when you get that, like, we expect you to show us that you can do that. Which is sometimes a good time for the evaluator too, just to enjoy the opportunity to watch someone flounder through the countryside.
So 1988, when you avoided prison,
Yeah.
and then you went,
He worded it so much differently than me.
when you got out, then you did your like a standard 4 years, or did you start special?
Nope,
like
I
a
did
special direction right away?
Nope, I was an infantry guy. I did that. I was here at I went to Germany first, then I came here to Fort Campbell.
Just doing the regular stuff?
Just doing general infantry stuff. And to be honest with you, I really had gotten tired of helicopter pilots putting me in the wrong place. And I just didn't think it could be that hard. And so I thought, well,
I'm going to sign up.
I'm going to try that. And so I applied for Warrant Officer Flight School. Did that in 1995.
Oh, so you were already 7 years in.
Yeah. And then did that, went to Korea, traveled around some. And then kind of one of the major marking points and just in our recent calendar past is I went to then officer candidate school to switch from being a warrant officer to a commissioned officer. And I had started officer candidate school on the 9th of September. In the morning of the 11th, I'll never forget. Obviously, none of us who were alive will ever forget, but we'd been doing an obstacle course. It was kind of our first actual day of training. And I remember the commander called us all around, and he'd said that the World Trade Centers had been attacked. And again, I was kind of a senior guy in the Army. I had quite a few years under my belt, and I'd already been through warrant officer school, and so I knew there's kind of a program of instruction where they insert different things to get different responses, and I thought he was messing with us.
Oh, wow. Because this is 25 years in for you then.
Yeah, whatever it was.
Yeah, I did the math.
Yeah, I was going to have to take a shoe off, and it was going to be embarrassing in the camera. And so I never forget, his name was Captain Alan Prizer, and he said this, and so I sit there thinking to myself, because as a Christian, I also, I know where I work in my mission field, and I thought, the one thing he won't do is he won't go against God. So I had the smart aleck idea there's a little procedure, you raise your hand, you get recognized, and candidate Morgan requests permission to speak. It's kind of dumb, but it's part of the game. And he says, speak. And I said, in light of what you said just happened, I said, maybe this would be a good opportunity for us to just take a moment of silence and pray for the nation and all of us who will be involved in what's surely going to be war. And I'll never forget, he looked at me, he goes, that's a good idea. And he said, you can just pray. And I knew right then that,
it was
holy
serious.
crap, it's real.
Wow.
And so we were locked in this course. And I guess I should also add, I went to his office that night, and I was going to quit. I was going to go back to Fort Bragg because we're going to war, and that's what I'm here for. And Captain Prizer said, he goes, look, he said, I'll make you a deal. He said, if you will stay through the training, he goes, just keep training. He said, if your unit gets called up, he said, I'll do my very best to get you back. And I said, okay. And fast forward, you're locked in. Of course, at the time, if you think to 2001, not everybody had computers that made phone calls, and we were getting no news because you're in this locked in course. It didn't really exist for us. So I graduated on the 14th of December as a second lieutenant.
How many weeks or months was this?
This is like a 3-month deal.
Mm-hmm. Then you come out,
and it was
this
insatiable.
surreal,
I'm hanging on watching the news, and by now America's gotten tired of it, and I'm glued to the TV. Like, oh my God, this really happened.
Yeah.
And so for Captain Prizer, cool church nerd thing. He was a great guy, but he was from New York, and he said, if he ever watches this, I'll probably die. But he said that he was a Jew, and I just always referred to him as an angry atheist. But he was a big sports fan, and he would always talk about Bear Bryant. And I'm not a sports fan. I was in the band, so I don't know squat about sports, except that some of them had cheerleaders.
Nice.
And so he's talking about this, of whom much is given, of him much will be required. And he keeps talking about this Bear Bryant quote. And I'm like, and he was just killing me. And so I went up to him one day.
Like it's Bear Bryant's quote.
Yeah, and I went up to him one day. I was like, hey, the whole permission to speak thing. And he's like, speak. And I was like, this Bear Bryant quote that you keep giving, I said, you're really killing me. I said, it's actually not Bear Bryant. I said, it's actually in the Gospel of Luke. And, he's very colorfully adjective, noun, and verb told me how dumb I was and to go away. And I was like, all right. And so he comes back the next day and he yells at me, he's, get over here. So I go running over, position of attention. And he looks at me and goes, you're right, it was in Luke. But so
he acknowledged it.
But so fast forward, again, back to Silent Run. Years after 2001, I don't remember what the year was, but he actually came and preached his first sermon from my pulpit at Silent Run.
Wow.
And he's still active Bible teacher, active pastor at his church.
Incredible.
Alan, if you ever watch this, I love you and I'm so proud of you.
Yes.
But he's just a great guy. Him and his
Way to
wife,
go,
Jackie.
Alan.
Yeah, he's an awesome guy.
Great story.
Yeah.
Great story.
Incredible. Well, in that, I have a question along the lines of, obviously, it sounded like in your story that you had faith, you were following Jesus when you went into the military, right? So what's that story of pastoring? At what point did that, during your military career or after, the journey of feeling that call to move into ministry in such a direct and applied
good
way?
question. See, I'll delve into that one way quicker than a lot of other stuff. So yeah, I grew up the kid in the church. Doors were open. Parents took us, all the things. And I'll also say that I remember, I'll be first to say I'm a Bible guy, not a denominational guy. I don't care what sign's out front. But so we attended this little Methodist church in our town of Newton Hamilton, and I'm terrible with names, but I will forever remember Pastor Don Pellman. He was a retired truck driver. And the Methodists do these things called confirmation classes. Mm-hmm. Well, I sat up in his second story office all summer long, suffering through these things as a 12-year-old kid. And I was like, this is freaking killing me, man. Like, bless it. How did I get into this mess? And then at the end of it, he covers the plan of salvation and he looks at me and goes, what do you think about that? And I looked at him, I'm a 12-year-old kid. I think I'm going to hell. And he said, does that sound like a good idea? I said, I don't think that sounds like a good idea at all. So I did right there in his office. I decided that Jesus was going to be my Lord. He was kind of one of those guys that, and again, not to get, churchy, but you weren't getting sprinkled in his Methodist church. You were getting dunked. And so I got dunked. I think he even held me under for a little long because I was surly even as a kid.
Until bubbles.
Wait for the bubbles.
Some people you got to see the bubbles.
And so, fast forward through those teen years, I pretty much went to whatever church my girlfriend went to, just to be totally truthful. And I don't know.
It's like your helicopter.
Yeah, I don't know any other Christians that are like this, but after I accepted Christ, I also got really, really smart. and I got a little smarter than God, and tried some things on my own.
Guilty.
And I'll be honest with you, it really never worked out in my favor. I always found that his plan actually was a pretty good plan. But so I had some years where I was just not living as a believer. I was not bringing any glory to the kingdom or to anybody for that matter. And then I met, just the cutest little girl down in Alabama. I mean, bless her heart, she was cute, had a great idea, and I'd ask her out because I was kind of a big deal. And she said yes. And 3 weeks later, we'll skip through that, but 3 weeks later,
how much of this story is he going to tell?
3 weeks later, we were married.
He says
3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
Wait, you met her and 3 weeks later you got married?
Yeah.
People don't do that.
Yeah, he did.
That was 28 years ago.
Yeah,
I sure did it.
She's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it worked out, I guess.
Look, I'm going to say it. It's my story.
Yeah, it's your story.
It's your story.
The reality is this. My wife and I got married because she wanted to have premarital relations, and I just told her not till we're married. That's why we got married in 3 weeks. Now, if you believe that, that's an absolute lie. I'll be the first one at the altar.
I told him, Audrey, before we came in here not to say that.
Don't you put that on?
That's my joke.
Put that on her.
That's always my joke. I tell people. She says it's not true, but whatever. So anyway, we'd gotten married. We were both Christians. Neither one of us were really doing a great job of living for the King. But we found that the more little bit we put forth to live for the King, it seemed like he was exponentially blessing us. And it just kind of, it was just kind of we'll just call it a Jesus snowball. The more we tried to give, the more he showed us that this is the way I want for you. And we'd gotten to serve in local churches everywhere we went. One of my great mentors in New York, Stan Gilcash, he let me work with kids, which I thought was a terrible idea even at the time. But got to work with young kids and be a youth leader and just serve in the church and realize that we just love serving the Lord, to sound like a nerd. And so we were super blessed. And so, kind of fast forward through that, just continued. And then at one point in my career, and I will just at least say
and this is during your military service as well. Yeah.
Every time the military moved us, we just figured we were missionaries. The Lord's putting us in a different field.
How many places did you guys live together and during those career?
Well, we were at Alabama together for flight school where we met and married. And then from there we went to Korea. They had, it was called an unaccompanied tour. I paid for her to come over. She lived in this little room, smaller than this little spot we're sitting right now. So we left Korea. We went to upstate New York. So from a girl from South Alabama who'd really never seen snow to you get an army house that comes with a snowblower. She was a little taken aback.
Yeah.
And then we went from there and then to Fort Bragg. And then we left Fort Bragg in 2004 to come to Fort Campbell, and we've been here since. But anyway, so a little event, my career in 2011, I just decided that was the pinnacle of all things military. I was well over 20 years, and I knew that the Lord let me rephrase that. I didn't know what being called meant, but I knew that the Lord was done with me in the Army, and I was going to go into ministry. And again, as kind of a surly guy, I knew that I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm a freaking Night Stalker.
Yeah.
So if God's calling me to the ministry, I'm getting out of the military, and there's like 1,000-person church that's just
you're going hard.
That's where I'm going. I mean, that's where I'm. Yeah, well, it doesn't work like that.
Right.
God also taught me some humility. So we retired, and I realized that I was preaching at arts fairs and craft festivals and state parks to like 6 and 8 people to figure out what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And I did that for over a year. And a very dear man here in the community, Bob Morrison. Bob was my mentor here.
Yeah.
I went and met with him. I was talking to this church, and I didn't know what you're supposed to do as a pastor, but I figured the guy who's the associational missionary, I probably had to go talk to him. And he asked me, I'll never forget, he says, "Are you called to this church?" And I was like, it's kind of a church word. I got a seminary degree, but I don't know what that means. And he said, you're either called to this church, he said, you're going to have a great first ministry. He said, or you're a preacher that wants a church and you're going to go there not being called and they'll crush you and you'll never preach again. And I looked at him, I was like, Bob, is there a middle? And he's like, nope. And so I went there. I'm going to speak for them because they're not here, but I'm going to speak for the church and say, we had a great first ministry. We were there for 7 years. We just got to see great kingdom things, people saved, church growing, people being active. So it was pretty awesome, I think. And I'm telling the story, so it's my story.
Yeah, you got the mic.
Yeah.
So you said you retired in 2012,
12.
but you went back.
I did.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, I thought you were doing civil service at this point. Okay.
No. So I retired, and I believe that's absolutely what God wanted. And so I was serving here in the community as a pastor. I still worked on Fort Campbell as a civilian. And in 8 years had elapsed, and I was having a conversation with what became my boss, and he said, "Hey, ever think about coming back in the Army?" And I was like, "Nope." And he said, "What'd you think of it?" I was like, "Yeah."
Show me the check.
I mean,
Yeah.
sure. And I said, and this is a very rare opportunity that I had learned and matured of many mistakes I'd made in the past. But I said, but I need to talk to my wife real quick. And he said, yeah. So I go over to the side. I'm like, hey, I said, the boss asked me, this Matt Harris thing. And she said, what you tell him? I said, yep. She goes, okay. And so I went back over. I was like, hey, boss, we're in. And it took about 90 days, I think, for the paperwork. And I was standing in front of our memorial wall, taking my oath of office. And of course, there was a lot of rumors at the time of, maybe they brought me back to punish me for something they finally caught up to me, or this, that, and the other. Or it was about the money, which was not true because it was a huge pay cut. But what I believe is this, and I will go to my grave with this. I really love serving not only in the Army, but this particular unit. I love it. It is.
It's like pastoring.
No, it's not.
No?
It's like an absolute drug addiction that you just can't.
But I mean, you're shepherding.
Yeah. There's all that altruistic things, but it's like a drug. And the only reason I think that God had elapsed that 8 years was because, again, it's a special operations unit that, it's just everything there is in Army aviation and special operations. So to get into it in itself is difficult. To retire and to get back into it is impossible. And I believe that God said, okay, you got out when I told you to get out, and you were obedient. And I know this is what you love. And I do love pastoring. I love pastoring people. But I also love this. And I think he let that 8 years elapse to say, if you'll be obedient and do what I tell you to do, I can truly do the impossible.
Yeah.
I will not only bring you back, but I will bring you back, and they will give you 10 hours of refresher training, and you're just back. And so I've been back for almost 5 years.
Do you feel like it's a mission field for you? I guess that's what I'm saying.
It is. I get so many unique ministry opportunities.
Yeah.
I tell people, God lets me pastor a church because there's lots of believers in our unit. But there's something about having your name on the sign of a church that makes it different from being a believer.
Yep.
It's like I'm Brother Tim at work. There's more people that know me by Brother Tim than by my rank.
Yeah.
And so I get to minister to people right where they are. Kids don't change what they're talking about when I walk in, but if our chaplain walks in, it changes. I'm just Brother Tim. And as weird as that is, that it sounds the same, they see it different. And I'm the guy that takes them flying and listens to them. I'm the guy that they text at 2:00 in the morning. I got to do a funeral for one of the men who participated in Black Hawk Down. I got to do his funeral last week. I got to do another just hero of America. I got to do his wife's funeral this previous week.
Wow, what an honor.
The opportunities I get to minister, no pastor will ever get to experience.
Right.
Yeah.
They're seeing you with them and not separate from them. Sometimes clergy can come off because you're not in and among them walking with them.
I'm too dumb to be different people at different places. The same guy you get here, same guy you get in the pulpit, same guy you get in the cockpit.
That's
I just am who I am. And I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Like I know I can be a little bit much. Like I get that.
So along with that, there's been some heavy stuff too. I mean, we had the tragedy. That's been about 2 years ago. The
two Blackhawks?
Yeah, the two Blackhawks. Yeah. So, you had to play a role as comforter in that a little bit too, right?
Yeah, we've had our own crashes as well, but the crash that you're talking about was Eagles 9. Man, I better not get choked up, but that was like 4 miles from our house. And I do a lot of law enforcement chaplaincy, and one of our officers, who is also retired from the 160th, so we worked together in both places. He called me, and my phone, and I heard the text, and I'd just gone to bed. I'd just come in from work. I was flying or doing something, and I let it go, and then it rang, and I was like, I better take that. And as soon as I picked it up, Rusty says, "Thank God you're alive." Sorry. I said, "What are you talking about?" Because anything aviation related that happens in our county, like they just automatically think it's me, whether it's good or bad. And he said, "Man, there's a crash right down the road from your house." So I shot down there that night, and I got there. The fire department was there, but one of the first folks there, and it was two Blackhawks that had collided in a training mission, and 9 soldiers lost their lives that night. And so I was involved with that and got to meet some great people and minister and just be there.
Wow, that's horrific.
Man, I'll tell you what, there's some things sometimes that just...
And the danger that you guys face, I think this is something we can talk about, but part of the Night Stalker is you're flying blacked out, right?
Oh, yeah. It truly is. It really is. It's just the most incredible of all things. I mean, it's like, well, you're a car guy. So imagine getting in one of your sports cars and not going to the track, but just running out to the Pinoral and turning your lights off and putting a set of night vision goggles on
and going for
and
it.
Just not only all out, but you're going all out with another car driving 10 feet beside you, and that's how you're going down the Pinoral.
Yeah. And then there's a few more outside of that too.
Right. And then, oh, by the way, you're going to come into downtown Madisonville, and you're going to,
landed in the
you're
exact
going to
spot.
drive right up to the county clerk's office at 23:05:30, and so it's dangerous. But the danger is, the danger is so mitigated out by the control measures that you put in place, by the training, by having oversight of leaders and commanders that look you in the eye and say, "What are you about to do?"
So when you're blacked out, so all your instrumentation is in the helmet and the glasses, or do you have instruments here, or is there anything that?
So for us, I'll only speak for me and my airframe. It's fairly rudimentary, the instrumentation that you have. But there's, as far as I think what you're asking is is there displays and whatnot that no.
Okay.
Everything is all.
It's like flying by the seat of your pants.
It is. It literally is. There's no hydraulic controls. There's no assistance from the aircraft. There's no autopilot. There's your hands and feet.
It's raw flying.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things we talk at Tunco about that is one of our 10 truths is mastery.
Yeah.
And I think in today's fast forward society, it's very easy to underappreciate the hours and the training and things that go in to be able to master. It's an art.
It is.
So you're doing things by feel. AI is not telling you what to do. You don't have some generated screen on the backside of your glasses that's some cool thing.
It's not as nearly as high tech as sometimes
Correct.
TV makes people.
Yeah.
So
falsely
for us,
assume.
our and I won't because I'm not sure of the parameters, but I will simply say that So for our dual prep platform, our other company that does the close air support mission, for them, their targeting system is literally a grease pencil mark on the windscreen, and that is their instrumentation. It's a grease pencil mark.
Wow.
And I would tell you that the level of accuracy would rival most deer hunters in the woods of Hopkins County. And the only thing that controls...
You don't want to be on the downside of that.
No, you'll only get that opportunity once.
And on some of these missions for our viewers, right, aren't you just hugging the contour? So you're using that Pennyrile Parkway, but sometimes you have a real low altitude approach, or
everything's different. It's all situational, but it's all, based on survivability and detectability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then in a mission, you actually have to do that, right? You have to land at the exact time, the exact point for the excessive.
People's lives literally depend on that timeline, yours and others.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for me, from a military respect and reverence and all that, I think for me, and I'm not asking you to engage on this, I'm just putting a statement out there. That's some of the frustrations that I have when you see disrespect about military in general, or the work, or even people talking about budget cuts and we shouldn't be spending this and we shouldn't be spending that. I think the average person, the average American citizen, doesn't understand what it takes to really hone in the craft. Mm-hmm. It's not honing in the craft to kill somebody. It's actually honing in the craft to take care of your customers and not kill people. I mean, that's, and you have those kids practicing, two Blackhawks right beside each other in the middle of the night, to perfect that. And, you have a tragedy. So I'm saying from my chair, I'm super grateful for the risk that everybody in the armed forces take to protect us. Yeah. Even not while you're in combat, just the general risk that you take every day just to stay sharp. I mean, I have a house in Florida, and is it Elgin or Eglin? Eglin Air Force Base is right there. And, I see those guys flying F-35s and everything over every day, and you take it for granted because they're just zipping through there. But, those guys they're pulling some maneuvers, and I realize they're in state-of-the-art technology, but every time they climb in that cockpit, they're risking something.
There's always an inherent risk.
Yeah. So you went from kind of being a young man, not necessarily on the most successful path.
Circuitous route.
Okay. That works. End up in ministry. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about some of your favorite pastoring moments. Like, what are some of your favorite memories?
There's a bunch of them.
Because obviously, a lot of your military stuff is classified. So
I would tell you, it's funny. There's so many great memories. Some of them are, I know this sounds strange, but really some of my favorite ministry moments are funerals. Okay. Bob Morrison and I had a deal that whichever one, we shared an airplane together. We were co-owners of an airplane. And whichever one of us died first, the other one had to do the funeral. And and Bob, for those who don't know, was kind of famous around here. I mean, he was a soul winner. But I got to preach his funeral, and I'll never forget. The local Southern Gospel group was there. I mean, it was just an awesome opportunity. But so one of the cool things was, it happened recently at the church that I'm at now. We were deployed. We deployed on a no notice, like literally, a couple hours later, there we go. And so we're sitting in this country, and young kids sitting there. And I mean, all I can say is he's just a pretty young fella. I mean, Austin Pete, he's just a pretty kid. And he's talking about he was supposed to get married on Saturday. This is like a Monday or Tuesday. I'm like, what? And he's like, yes, sir. I'm like, did you tell anybody this? He's like, well, no, sir. Because he's young. And I was like, oh, because they were getting married in Puerto Rico. And I said, look, when you get back, they had tickets, dress, all the things. It's all gone now. It's just that money's spent.
Yeah.
So they get, long story short, they get back, and he said, we still want to get married in the church, And so I had told my folks, I said, look, we're going to have a young couple come here Wednesday night, and they're getting married. And I said, everything that they had planned, they basically gave up truly for the defense of our country.
Wow.
And they're going to come here on Wednesday night to a wedding with a church full of people. They're going to come with gifts, food, just like, and none of their family's going to be. So we've got Facebook Live going, blasting back to Puerto Rico. And this was the most beautiful bride. Like, I'm telling you,
yes,
if magazines could find this couple, they're incredible. And so they get married, everything booms back to Puerto Rico. The other one is we've had a rash of, for you guys, remember what it was like to be a young man and invincible and all the things. And we've had a kind of a rash of young men who have accepted Christ in the last 6-12 months and getting baptized at the church. And these kids are driving 45 minutes to an hour to come to our church. And I know they're not coming for a long time. You can't sustain that. Mm-hmm. But they come for a season, and to see them baptized and wives baptized, or to see them start coming as young men, and then they start coming with girlfriends, and they start coming with wives.
Yeah.
And so those are the ministry moments that, it's incredible. I'm doing a funeral for a local fella here on Monday. I remember I buried his wife, and I remember her grandson. It was one of her greatest prayer concerns. And again, for anyone that's been in ministry, like I can help you shoulder a burden for a minute, but there's a bunch of you, I don't have that bandwidth. So your prayer request for this grandson, it's just not staying on the top of my brain, but it did for her, because that was her grandson. Mm. And that kid professed Jesus over her grave, at the graveside.
That's awesome.
Wow.
I mean, those are things that like I can nerd out on ministry, cool church things. And God's just put me in I love seeing people go, man, my life's just not going the way I thought it would, think it should, whatever. And seeing people make a turn and give their lives to Jesus. And, I'll be the first to say, people get, we use the church word delivered from stuff way differently. Some people get saved, and, the term is radically saved. Well, yeah. Pretty sure every salvation is radical, because it goes from hell to heaven. But, some people's lifestyles change at different speeds.
Yeah.
Mine did. I didn't go, oh, I'm following Jesus. I'm all in. I'm carrying my Bible. So it's fun to watch people go through that transformation and metamorphosis and in life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Were there people that inspired you through your career in the military to be the kind of guy you should have been? Like in those years where you were...
Guy by the name of, I'm a tattle on myself. There's a guy by the name of Mark Musselwhite. We called him Big Georgia. Good guy. Just super... He was just the guy you wanted to be. I mean, he was, all the things, and we were walking, me and him and a guy by the name of Mike Mogg. Again, usually not good with names, so the fact that I remember him should be like, oh. So we're out in the desert of El Centro, probably 1999, 2000. We were talking about something. Somebody made a comment, whatever, and I may or may not have had even as a believer in Christ, a very robust vocabulary of the vernacular.
Cheers to that. Cheers to that. I still keep it.
And so I had gone off on a tirade about something, and I'll never forget it. It was me, it was Mark, and it was Mike, and he looked at me and said, "You like to kiss your wife?" And I and he says, "Man," he says, "I just can't imagine somebody as beautiful as your wife having those filthy lips up against hers." And man, that just struck me. And I was like, oh.
That's what I told Cliff the other day.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it really made a difference to me. And again, to be totally honest, the words may not come out But that doesn't mean they're removed from the brain all the time. When people do dumb things,
Right.
Sometimes the brain.
Yeah, you've got that catalog back there.
Yeah,
somewhere.
but man, I'll never forget when Mark Musselwhite said that, and made a huge impact on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why that didn't impact me when you said it
Yeah.
is because my wife is amazingly beautiful.
Yeah.
But I learned the art of the vernacular, as you said. I actually learned it from her. So
So we got more problems than I thought.
well, no, we just both have dirty lips, so it doesn't matter.
okay.
It doesn't matter. It's equally dirty.
One sailor kissing another.
One
huh?
sailor kissing another.
Can we all join hands? Let's take a little 10 minutes.
Yeah, from one seaman to another seaman.
Oh.
So, Tim, Silent Run,
Yeah.
that story. How did you connect there? How did that begin? How did you get connected with Silent Run, where you're ministering,
Again,
pastoring? now?
totally church nerdy.
Yeah.
Because Silent Run literally sits 3/4 mile up a dead end road surrounded by swamp and water moccasin. And I'm not Pentecostal, so I don't do the snake thing. So I just tell you straight up. But I was pastoring or preaching in any church that would let me come. I mean, I don't care what signs out front. You let me. Oh, I'm bringing the Bible.
Yep.
And I'm preach. I don't know how terrible it's going to be, but.
Right.
And so I was preaching a little church over on the other side of Dawson, and somehow their search committee, a guy by the name of Raymond and John and some other folk ended up over there. And so I don't, like now you can always pick a search committee out, but then I didn't know nothing. And so they ended up there and they invited me out to the church to come and preach. And again, I, for the life of me, have no idea why, but they said, hey, we would be willing to vote on you. And I'm thinking, well, that's going to be terrible because they've heard me preach now. They're not going to let me come here. And they did. There was 2 people that voted no. It was a pretty small congregation. There was 2 people that voted no. Bless their hearts. I still love them.
Yeah.
Silent Run, though.
Yeah.
That was the name of it.
Yeah. Silent Run.
Kind of goes with the whole Night Stalker thing.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about
Yeah,
that.
I was sitting here thinking of that. I was like,
It was
Is that
great. It
where
was a
you were
great
heading?
ministry.
Going? Yeah.
And I will be forever, I will truly forever be indebted to those people for tolerating me in my first ministry. I made a lot of mistakes. I mean,
You think your dad had it right? Is that what
he
you
did. He did. I made some horrific, truly horrific pastoral errors in judgment as far as how to be a pastor, how to sometimes
Right.
deal with, I don't know if anyone knows this, but sometimes there are disagreement among the brethren.
yeah, it's rare, but it has
Again,
been heard.
and
It's
I
been
did-
reported.
sort of like
and
you
I
did
dealt
the
with them in a
military,
very,
kind of military.
I dealt with them in a very militaristic
Yeah.
viewpoint of, like, I don't know if you know this, but
How's
I'm a
that working
pastor, I'm
for
in
you?
command, this is the way we're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's
And
that
it wasn't,
working?
and they were so graceful or gracious. I will forever be indebted to them. Even the ones that I've offended, I still owe. I'm still forever sorry for some of the things I did.
Yeah, but if you have the right heart, for real, you
Yeah.
end up landing in the right spot.
Yeah, it was the
with all
right.
that,
It was the right intention, just the very wrong delivery.
I've done it.
Been there.
I've done it. How many years?
I was there for 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And there was the former pastor. I can't give him kudos enough because, frankly, he'd been there for 30. And now you got this, and there had been a couple guys in between us that didn't last very long. But he'd been there for 30. I was a new pastor, rambunctious, and he'd built, he had obviously through the Lord and the Holy Spirit, but he had built a church, and now you got some whippersnapper coming in, and he wasn't always understanding of my ways, and we didn't always see eye to eye. But I'll tell you, he was a phenomenal man. He ended up being very gracious. For years, we would do funerals together, and I would tell you, he may not say this, but I would tell you that if you were going to plan your funeral, the best thing you could do is say, I want Tim and Wayne to do it, because we did an amazing funeral together. We worked well together. He was just a great man of God. He was, he'd gotten gracious of me in the end. How about that?
Yeah. That's great. Let me, I want to just kind of transition here just a little bit. Tim, one of the things I love about you is your attitude. And, we've we haven't been through military shit together, but we've been through some other shit,
Boy, we have.
right? And
Vernacular.
yeah,
That's right. I translated to the King
he
James
knows.
what
I
he
did
said.
too. I went right to it.
He knows immediately what I'm talking about. That's why I said these words bring clarity, brother.
Yeah.
They bring clarity. So, life's not always been easy.
Yeah.
Been put into some situations together, and never forget the day that you text me about Audrey, and I just want to talk about that a little bit,
Sure.
because the listeners can't see it, but we've got an audience with us today, some young recruits from Tunco, and one of the subjects that we talked about today was crossover effect, and having the ability, to stay focused under fire, and obviously being a Night Stalker, that's probably a big aspect of it. But so Audrey, you call me and you're like, "Hey man, she's been in a wreck and I don't know."
Yeah.
So these guys, I haven't told them anything about that. So I just want to talk a little bit about that, and just, I want our listeners and I want my staff that's here to hear, life doesn't always give you what you'd like.
Mm-mm. So on May 17th, I had dinner reservations at a new restaurant in town for my wife and I. I was really looking forward to a romantic dinner, and she was on her way home from work. She'd picked up Mexican food for our daughter. And I always say, my wife is the opposite of me. She doesn't speed and she doesn't text when she's driving. But she'd left the roadway, a long, straight stretch, dry road, daytime, all the things. Left the roadway, car dropped off the side, car went airborne. She flew 52 feet. And without getting a scratch on her body, she shattered her spine with a spinal cord sever. She was 3 miles from the house. And strangely enough, she called me and she was crying, said she'd been in a wreck. And, she's calling me, so obviously everything's okay. That's,
And what he's getting ready
What
he's getting ready to say speaks to the lady that Audrey is, which is even more of a badass than Tim is.
She is. And she was apologizing for wrecking a car. And so I jumped in my car and I shot on down the road. I get there, and as I come around kind of a gentle sweeping left-hand turn, I did quickly realize that the Ford Taurus, i.e. the bullet, will not come down from 110 to stopped quick enough. So I go past, and I come back, and she's crying, and I look at her. She doesn't have a scratch on her. At this point, she still hadn't told me she's paralyzed. Had spoken with the fire department. We actually had a professional firefighter that had showed up. A soldier had stopped. And then she said that she was paralyzed, and she couldn't move her from her waist down.
And she apologized to you, right? She's like, "I'm sorry."
She kept apologizing, and I was like, "Baby," I said, it's just a car." And I was thinking to myself, I hadn't said it yet, but I was going to get it out soon enough. I know you've only had it for 2 weeks, but it's still just a car. She chose to fly with Aerovac instead of her own husband, and flew down to Nashville. One of our local Trigg County deputies. I serve some of the greatest law enforcement officers in the world. Hopkins County Sheriff, Trigg County Sheriff. They had a deputy there. 2 of my unit chaplains beat me to the hospital. My chain of command was at the hospital. Repeatedly came to visit. Regiment commander, battalion commander, company commander. The outpouring of grace and the Lord's providence was unmatched.
So they flighted her from the site?
Yeah, she did a short ambulance ride to another field, but flew her down there. She spent 11 days in Nashville. The surgeon told her the next day, he said, "You will never," basically if you stick your finger in your belly button, anything from there down will never move or be functional again. And then 11 days later, we moved to kind of prayer request. We started looking. They said the Shepherd Center in Atlanta is the best place there is for spinal cord injury. And that's where we're going. I don't know how we're getting there or anything else, but Lord knows the need, and here we come. And not only miraculously to get into a place with a huge waiting list, but I don't know if you've ever had insurance, but to get insurance to agree to it and all the things. And 11 days later, we were sitting in the Shepherd Center and we started our journey, as I say, because I'm a pretty good husband. I got a suite for my wife to summer in Atlanta with a staff. That's the way I like to phrase it. But we spent the summer in Atlanta at the Shepherd Center, a spinal rehab facility. It's just been an amazing journey. So
that was just May
17th. And again,
how is she recovering at this stage?
She's a rock star. I wish I could show pictures. She's done all the things. We brought her home. She's got her wheelchair. I was a little upset that she didn't get a wheelchair that matched the color of the car that she wrecked, because I just bought it for her.
We can arrange that.
We could. Yeah. Fire bronze metallic, if you could help me.
Yeah, we can arrange that.
Because her car, my truck, and our motorcycle now all matched. And that was, for an OCD guy, that was important.
It needs to be this way.
But, so she's in the wheelchair. She's doing the things. We were blessed. The hardest thing in the world, well, the one thing I would never do, I would never come and say, I need help. I need this. The words will not leave my mouth. But the hardest thing in the world to do was to accept help when you knew you needed it. None of the modifications that took place to our house were things that were outside of my ability. But I'm in Atlanta. I would come back. Again, my chain of command was incredible. I drove back and forth to Atlanta, I don't know how many times. I did very little work all summer long. But, people came in, put a chairlift in, put floors down, put ramps in, cut cabinets out so she could get a wheelchair under them. And we came home to a yard full of people who loved us. We had, she got a police escort home. I'll share this. The first deputy that arrived on scene, I'll never forget, because now I know she's paralyzed, and I'm actually legitimately starting to wonder, oh crap, we had a lot of hopes and dreams planned here, and I don't even know if she's going to survive this thing we got going.
Yeah.
Or what life's going to look like for us. And the deputy, he's a black Tahoe. It's all blacked out. I can't see who's in it, but he opens the door, and I remember the first thought in my mind was, sorry. Was, Lord, you sent me a miracle deputy. This deputy had a kidney transplant. And I thought, Lord, if you can send me Johnny as a sign of your miraculous power, this is going to be okay. I don't know what it is. And so he comes walking over. But so when the escort came, Johnny escorted her home with, we had 7 or 8 different cars, and I think 4 agencies, including KSP, which is our son's a KSP trooper. And I remember Johnny came up to the car, and the last time he saw her, she was getting drug out of a car, and he went to speak. She's crying, he's crying, I'm crying. And there was snot flying everywhere, but it was just it was a cool experience. And we've got even after we brought her home, you start to realize your whole goal in leaving the hospital, you're focused on getting home, because everything's obviously going to be great when you get home. You're going to got that behind us. Well, there's a whole other slew of things that come, but the other was I got her home, and she was kind of stuck in the house. She can get her wheelchair down the ramp to the driveway or to the back deck, but
now what?
Now you can't. But so we got her this chair. It's called the action chair, and it's tracked. It's like a skid steer, and the thing is freaking awesome. You can get lights for it. You can get fishing rod holders, gun holders.
Did you buy yourself one too?
No, I got the stand. I can just stand on the back of hers.
That's awesome.
And it'll stand her upright. And the reason we got it, I let her try it at the Shepherd Center. And the first time she stood up in it, I wasn't thinking.
Oh, she can stand up.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen those. I
Yeah,
think
it goes
I
straight
wasn't
vertical.
thinking, but I walked over and I gave her a kiss. Again, I just want to stick my lips against hers, you know? And we realized in that moment, that's the first time that we'd stood face to face since the accident.
Oh, wow.
Now again, we're crying. And she's like, I don't know what this cost or how we're getting it, but I got to have this. And yes, we do. And so to see her, like one of my coolest things is to come home from work, and I look to see if her track chair's moved. If the track chair's moved, or if there's dirt and leaves and grass, you know, in the tracks.
Yes.
I just feel good because she's out ripping through the yard.
Yes.
And it's so cool. We're going on a hunting trip to Wyoming in a couple of weeks.
Beautiful.
And we're taking the track chair.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
I don't know if she's got the stamina to do it or not, but I won the trip 2 years ago, and we won airfare and all the stuff, which now it is purely, it's kind of like we're focused on the objective, and I don't care that there's rounds flying by us or what the cost is at this point. We're going to the objective, and the objective is Sheridan, Wyoming, where my bride wants to go up and down the streets of Sheridan, and that's why we're going on this hunting trip. I don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Good man.
Yeah.
For
Good
someone in our audience that's struggling to ask for help, what would you say to them?
Oh, bless it. I'm not the
'Cause
guy
there's
for
a
this.
lot of us, right, that struggle. But with where you are on this side of it and having been the recipient of so much love,
It's just grace. Sometimes you have to be forced to accept help, and that's where I was. And I've gotten that lesson over and over. I've been involved in several nonprofits. We have a thing called the Night Stalker Association, and I'm the president of that, which is primarily to take care of soldiers and families. And I love, like one of the greatest joys is for me to be able to give money or to help or assist. We had a tornado in Clarksville, and we had a tornado in Dawson. And I went around giving gifts. I hate to take anything. And so I would only say to myself, not to anybody else, but to myself, don't rob somebody of the blessing and the joy of helping and giving. You know, it's hard, especially for us as men. I mean, it's just tough. But if it wasn't for the people that came alongside of us, we wouldn't have got through this. If it wasn't for somebody, you know, wheelchairs don't go on carpet upstairs.
right.
We lived in a 2-story house with a girl in a wheelchair. The two don't. So if it wasn't for somebody putting the floor down for us, if it wasn't for somebody fixing the stairs and putting in a chair, we'd still be sitting in the living room wondering how we're going to get her a shower because all the showers are upstairs.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she moves from that chair to a chairlift.
Yeah,
she did pretty good. She navigates that all right.
Oh, she's a little rock star. My wife is. She has always been very quiet and reserved. She's always been. She's been the best ministry and life partner you could ask for. She's never liked the spotlight or anything. She's, you know, but she's taken ownership of this. She's taken ownership of her care and her recovery. Yeah. You know, she transitions out of stuff.
So getting in a vehicle, we
went,
use a typical vehicle and then hook that deal on the back or whatever.
Yep. We first of the things they teach you at the Shepherd Center was getting in and out of vehicles. So we did the bullet, you know, my beater work car for once, just, you know, practicing. That's like what we really have. I said, my truck's the hardest thing we got. I had a 1-ton truck to pull our camper that, you know, and so I take it down there because we got to try it. And so we go out to the parking garage and the therapists are all with us. And therapists are totally on board. They're like, yeah, this is what we do. We do this all the time, you know, And the closer we get and more she realizes what truck we're going to, you can see her face like, that's not going to work. So we get over there and I have a picture of her. The therapist is standing in front of my truck with her bottom touching the floorboard, and her face says, this is not happening with the cripple girl. I got another picture of the cripple girl sitting in her rightful place of the queen, and the therapist was over on the driver's side just beaming, and I had that picture
that's awesome.
made into a canvas print, and we gave it to her and we left, and we said, listen, Our family does not accept no. Our family accepts, how do we get to yes? And that's,
She's probably developing some serious upper body strength.
she is. I told her. I said, baby, I said, do you know
They
how
wouldn't
many?
even. That's why they wouldn't let her do the electric chair, right? They were like,
yeah.
they're like, you're too strong. You got to.
Yeah.
You need to do
Yeah,
this.
they're-
Yeah, it's
yeah.
good for you.
She had a power chair at first because she had her sternum was broken, just till she could get through it. And they took it from her. They repoed that pretty quick.
Yeah, like you don't want this.
But I told her, I was like, I said, all these middle-aged ladies with flabby arms. I said, they're all getting gym memberships. I said,
Yeah,
they still got flabby arms. I said, baby, you're toned up pushing that
What do you think
chair.
I'm wearing this jacket for?
Yeah, she's awesome. She's the best thing. Notwithstanding Jesus, but she's the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
I certainly don't deserve her.
That's awesome, man.
She's a little rock star, and she's cute,
So
and she gets front row parking.
it's
That's always nice.
that was on the T-shirt, right?
I got her a shirt. It's got a wheelchair on it. It says "Just in it for the parking."
Yeah. She's wearing it in the wheelchair. That's the picture this guy sends me. Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
even right.
So another thing we talk about at Tunco is grit. Audrey has grit.
She does.
She has grit.
That's grit. And,
does.
how easy would it have been for her to not put in that effort, not have that drive.
Wow, yeah.
And
We saw it.
And-
We saw it at the hospital this summer. The people. I will unashamedly say the people that were. I mean, we're in a room. The playing field is level. Everybody's in a wheelchair. But I would tell you first and foremost, it was immediately evident the people that didn't have faith. Like, I don't care. Again, I don't care what denomination. The people without some faith source, and I'm going to say unashamedly God. First and foremost, I mean that right
Low
there is
performers, huh?
cut line. And the other is, again, there has to be something in your heart that says, I'm designed for more. Like, I can do more.
Yeah.
And that was Audrey's thing. She had hit therapy. She did all the things.
Yep.
She's not a swimming pool girl, but she loved the pool for therapy. In fact, I'll say, literally, it's funny. Like tonight, two of her therapists are going to get to witness my unit doing what we do downtown in that city because we're there for a training event. And we were going to go. She decided to get sick last week, so she's still feeling puny. But my unit is going to show them what we do so they understand this is the couple that you had. Tim can be
that's
intense
cool.
sometimes, but
This is why.
this is why. And so they're getting to do
That's
that
cool.
tonight.
Wow.
And I'm super stoked. I wish
Are you going? You're not going on
No.
a mission, yeah.
No, just folks I work with the greatest human beings in the world.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, what a brotherhood to be a part of.
Yes.
Of the Night Stalkers. What a great story, Tim. Thank you for what you do, and we appreciate you. One last thing before we go.
Sure.
You got to tell us who is a misfit that has either been in your life, you've read about, they could be alive, they could not be with us anymore. Tell us a misfit and why they're a misfit.
I would tell you, I would be remiss. I got a very dear friend of mine, David Bunch in Bowling Green. When I was a young man here at Fort Campbell the first time in 1994, I was delivering pizza for Papa John's as a side hustle.
Nice.
And I met David. We became lifelong friends. We've walked a lot of roads together. True outdoorsman. I may or may not hypothetically actually have landed in his driveway yesterday and gave a sweaty man with only a pair of shorts on a hug. But he's just an amazing individual, and David, we've done misfit adventures together,
Nice.
hunting trips to Colorado, and I know if I called him right now on the air and said, David, well, as a matter of fact, I'll share this real quick. I needed a chair or a trailer to transport Audrey's wheelchair. And so I found one in Bowling Green. I said, David, is this far from your house? He said, everything's far from my house. I said, can you look at it? And he goes, yeah, I'll look at it. He calls me. He's like, hey, yeah, it is what it is. I was like, well, can you give the guy a deposit? I'll come out, tomorrow. I'll pay for it. And he goes, I'll just pay for it and you can pay me back. Okay. I said, I'll be out in 2 or 3 days to get it. And he goes, okay. I call him in 2 days. I'm like, hey, I'm going to head out this afternoon. What time suits you? He goes, well, no time suits me because I'm 30 minutes from your house.
Wow.
I mean, that's my man, David.
That's
wow.
awesome.
Wow.
Why is he a misfit?
He's just a misfit because he's a mess. In fact, he used to
He's
live
a
here in
mess.
Madisonville. He opened the Papa John's here in 1995. David was the general manager.
Yeah.
But he's just a misfit because he's like the rest of us. He is deeply flawed, like all of us.
Yeah.
But he's tops in my book.
Awesome.
Real.
Well, Tim, we love you, brother. Appreciate you. Proud of you. Thank you for everything you do for our nation.
Thank you, my friend.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And
Tim.
listeners, this has been another episode of the Misfit Social Podcast. Do not forget to be a misfit.